Yeah, my name is Chrissna, Tom Hem, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I am Khmer. My dad's side, from what I understand, my grandpa's 50%. That would make my dad 25%, and me like an eighth. So I'm not too connected with my Chinese roots. We do celebrate Lunar New Year's by doing offerings for our ancestors. But for the most part, that's as much as we do on that side. I'm just more into like my identity and background, and yeah, love it. Yeah, currently right now I work in mental health as a client service coordinator at my evidence-based treatment centers in Seattle. More specifically, I work in the eating disorder center, and in my future occupation, I hope to be in a PhD program sometime soon.
Nice.
Yeah, this is funny just because just growing up, I was rebellious and I grew out my hair a lot just because I felt like it. And with my lighter skin tone, just because I didn't go outside as much as other individuals growing up. I was like a lighter skin tone, and basically at the temple, the old ladies there, Yeja, would always mistaken me for oh, con Kone, or con Japon, or like, oh, con tu Jan, just because it was just like the way I looked, it was just like more like an actor or a movie star that they saw on their Khmer dub films. So I was like, no, but I'll take it, I guess. So it was a funny thing to hear from them, more of a lighthearted, them joking. But I did, growing up, sometimes get like, I don't know, like Chinese or just like Filipino. I'm not always like Khmer. When I did correct people, they're like, actually, you know what, you do look, more Khmer. And I'm like, is it because I'm like the only Khmer person Like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I guess a big stereotype would be drinking Hennessy, of course, always partying a lot, and just a lot of like, oh, you're, Khmer, or like you're Cambodian, and like you're very light for a Cambodian person. Like, usually Cambodian people are like darker and stuff. So, are you mixed and stuff? I'm like, no, I'm not. I just don't go outside a lot. So that was just the thing. I think another big thing too, just because when I grew up a lot more, was because of gang affiliation. Not a lot of my family that live in Washington are like, had been interacted or I know like was part of a gang, but just like hearing my sides from like my family in California, they would always hear that growing up, like, oh, you're Cambodian, like what do you rep, or like where are you from, what are you from? So hearing things like that was just like, oh, dang, that's the different upbringings that I was exposed to. So it's an interesting thing to hear about, which I've never like come across. Yeah, and that's my aunt. So her specifically, she would always call me Tamray Tom, or like big elephant, just because I would always run around and stomp a lot on her hardwood floors, and I was like always like the tallest kid too, and then she would just call me that just as like to describe like how I was, like my erratic and like loud behavior. It's just like a big loud elephant. My late uncle would call me Gonjan, just because I look more Japanese from his perspective. I was like, okay, I get it. You don't have a name too, you can call me by that. But my parents, for them, they call me Atom, or Tom, which is my middle name, which I just said earlier. But Tom just also means older in Khmer, and so that was just their way of still addressing me to this day.
Nice.
I think my go-to answer is always saying resilience, because it's always true to always feel empowered in difficult situations, to know that you can like make it through or go through it. Just because that's my upbringing, was just like being in hard, difficult situations. It will just you'll grow to learn how to like solve and get out of those situations for the most part. Being Khmer also means to be always an underdog, I would say, just because our people aren't always talked about when addressing like other platforms of social media or just like in general. It's always like we're not always like brought up a lot, and so just having more exposure to our community and like what we go through, because we are our own like individuals selves, and like have our own stories to talk about too. We're not just like meshed in the whole entire like Southeast Asia diaspora. We are like our own people. So yeah. Yes, I feel very deeply connected with my culture. I think from the moment like going, just from my experience, just like my upbringing is like I'm Buddhist and going to the temple a lot, but not just like practicing it. Like it's more like the community feel, knowing how like the community interacts with each other. When my mom would talk to like the jab or like the older ladies there, talking to like other people, like it would be like a communal ground to like meet up with people who they haven't seen in like a long time, and just hearing their stories of like whether they talk about like their stories of survival in the Khmer home, or stories of like sharing like, oh, this dish is like how I make this food. I'm like, oh really, mom, can you learn how to make that? Can you get that recipe? Or just like things like that. It's just like the really like not want to say melting pot, but it's like a really like big collective of like ideas that are like blooming. It's so much like there to share. But I do understand that if you don't understand Khmer, it's a hard and difficult time to like grasp all that. But for me, at least, like my experiences were just like the temple, or just like in those spaces. It was just a lovely time to hear how people like came together to appreciate one another's presence.
Why did you want to participate in this project?
I felt that to share my story, or just like it's funny because like to talk about like our experiences, it's like often like a hidden story, and that's in reference to so many things right now with what I've like done growing up. It's like I don't want it to be like not shared, to bring again exposure, but bring more attention to how we had different experiences as like our Southeast Asian diaspora. And not a lot of like storytelling does occur within our youth or our age, because we do have a lot to share, being like in this day and age of like, man, how do we go about with like navigating the world as a Khmer, as me at least, like Khmer American, and being able to like juggle both sides of like American Western ideals, and then like Khmer and like communalistic ideals, being able to find that it's just my own one story out of like millions, and I would like to bring attention to that, just because I feel like it's a nice way to bring some perspective on it.
Fun fact you want to share about yourself or your culture?
Oh man, I guess fun fact about like my culture, I would say, is my name Chrissna, or the full name of this like sweet aromatic like smelling tree is Jan Chrissna, which is like one of like the native trees of Cambodia. And so when I went and found that tree specifically, I was like, oh my god, this is who I am? I'm a tree? That is crazy. And it was like a blooming forest with all of them too when we were driving past it. And I was like, dang, I do smell good. That was crazy. So yeah, I mean, I love the name. I'm gonna stick with it. And hopefully get a tree of myself soon and plant it somewhere.
Oh my gosh. Alrighty.